Hey, voucher scam listeners, Claire here. Welcome back. It's post-primary season, and we're updating you on the results.
As you know, if you listened to the last episode, Governor Abbott deployed all the resources at his disposal to target fellow Republicans who dared to defy his pro-voucher agenda.
He used his $6 million donation from Pennsylvania billionaire Jeff Yass. He visited districts. He openly campaigned against folks who he once supported.
We asked our friend Jaime Puente to help us break down the results. You'll recognize his voice from episode 3, where he helped us understand the history of public education and vouchers in Texas.
Let's get to know Jaime again.
My name's Jaime Puente. I'm the Director of Economic Opportunity for Every Texan. We're a statewide, nonpartisan nonprofit. We do advocacy in a wide range of issues, education being one of them. We like to say that social justice requires public policy. And so at Every Texan, we really focus on reinvesting and re-engaging with the multiracial democracy. So we try to reach every Texan.
We wanted to know, how is this primary season different from past primary seasons?
This is probably one of the most expensive. I've never seen state representatives raise as much as they have or spend as much as they have in some instances. We're talking, upwards of $1 million for a race of a district that has about 150,000 people. There is about $9.5 million spent across these races, both Governor Abbott's money and the voucher pack. There's no reason for people outside of Texas to really engage in local legislative politics.
So it's not only more expensive, but it's also money coming from outside the state.
There's always been the big national PACs, the big national partisan political organizing that does spend money in Texas, but not in this way, not in specifically targeting particular members for defeat the way we saw this time around.
Jaime gave us an example of what the increased dollars looked like at the local level.
I had the chance to be in Beaumont on one of the most important weekends of the entire primary season, the Saturday and Sunday before Election Day. And so waking up, going to sleep in the hotel room in Beaumont, I turned on the TV. What was I seeing? And in every single commercial break for the local TV networks, I saw, for every Dade Phelan commercial, the speaker Dade Phelan, I saw 2 anti-Dade Phelan commercials, right? That's what money does. And so when you have the mixture of a low turnout election and high spending, someone's going to get the return on their investment.
Jaime is referring to the significant return on investment seen by Governor Greg Abbott and the big donors who targeted local representatives. He also mentioned Texas Speaker of the House Dade Phelan, who was under significant pressure. We'll circle back to his race later.
But for now, we asked Jaime to give us a broad picture of the primary results.
There was about 20 members of the Republican majority in the House who voted to strip out the voucher provision from the bill at the time. And since then, the governor and the out-of-state voucher folks have come after those members very hard. The goal was to unseat them, to win a voucher-proof majority in the House. In some ways, the governor got his way. My count was there are 9 anti-voucher Republicans who lost outright. There are 6 in a runoff, and that's not including Speaker Phelan, who's in his own runoff currently. But there are 6 members who are in a runoff. 5 of them were directly attacked by Governor Abbott for their anti-voucher vote. Right now, what we're facing is a May runoff where it really could determine whether or not we are able to prevent another voucher bill coming at us next year.
We asked Jaime to give us some examples of incumbent representatives who were under fire and what their fights looked like.
Representative Van Dever was one of them, and some of the attacks that they were using had nothing to do with vouchers. In effect, they were being attacked for their lack of support on border security. His main attacks against the incumbent were that Rep. Van Dever was not as supportive of the governor's border security efforts as he could have been. It makes no sense because Brett Van Dever has voted for every single border security measure and budget that the governor has put up.
We wanted a better understanding of this tactic, so we asked Jaime to explain more.
These incumbents who lost were not necessarily losing because of their anti-voucher support. They were losing because the governor was saying that they didn't support border security. Or, for example, Steve Allison, who lost in San Antonio. He was attacked by saying that he didn't support increased teacher pay because he helped defeat vouchers. So there's a number of ways that incumbents were being attacked.
Jaime shared his thoughts on why these legislators have held strong, despite this immense pressure from Governor Abbott.
People in that part of the state also support public education because they love their high schools, they love their community schools, they know that their moms and their dads and their uncles and everyone else in their community who relies on the jobs that come from public education need that to continue. They're not going to appreciate when somebody comes along and says, hey, we want to fire your mom or your dad because we want to take that money from your district and put it into a private school that's not even anywhere near you. Texans recognize what is at stake for them.
It might seem obvious, but we wanted to understand why Abbott would use an unrelated issue to defeat these representatives.
The problem is that we live in a moment where it's easy to demonize and to use border security as a very flashy distraction. It worries people to see what's happening and to not understand it and have those fears and those misunderstandings inflamed by our state leadership in a way that is solely designed to build their own power and to manipulate. The governor has done it masterfully to use border security to amass so much power that even the people who supported him in building that power through border security, every single one of the Republican members that he attacked voted for the things that he is now using against them.
So let's get back to Dade Phelan. We wanted a peek into the runoff that Speaker Dade Phelan is facing out in East Texas and why this runoff matters. But first, a quick reminder of the role of the Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives is a pretty important role. It is the one of three statewide leadership roles. The Speaker of the House is not elected by all Texans, but he's elected by the representatives that all Texans send to Austin. His job is to listen to his members and help the process of government along. And I think of him more as the train conductor for the Texas House. He assigns committee chairs. He determines which pieces of file legislation are referred to which committees. He rules on parliamentary procedural things like points of order, which could mean a bill lives or dies in the House. Without the support of the Speaker of the House, very few things could make it into law.
It seems inarguable that Speaker Phelan is popular among the members of the Texas House. As a reminder, he was chosen as Speaker by a vote of 145-3 at the start of the last legislative session. So what's different now? Why is he under fire in his district and facing a primary challenger?
I mean, the elephant in the room is he impeached the sitting Attorney General of Texas, laid out some dirty laundry. He took a stand in favor of his principles and in favor of the Texas Constitution and in favor of what many think is law and order and common human decency. He came out on the losing side of that.
And we learned that the attacks were also against his fidelity to tradition and procedure within the House.
He was attacked for allowing common debate to occur, for not using his authority in the ways that we've seen the lieutenant governor use his authority in the Senate to overly determine which pieces of legislation move and don't move or are passed over and above the opposition.
Quick reminder, the lieutenant governor is Dan Patrick. and he has consolidated considerable power in his position over the 9 years he has held office.
Many wanted the Speaker of the House to do something very similar, if not the exact same thing, which is silence the minority party, prevent them from having any ability to represent their constituents or have a meaningful participation in the process. And the Speaker, to his credit, has refused to do that and continues to refuse to do that, relying on historical precedent. This is the way that the House has worked for more than 150 years.
So what is the real problem here? It's confusing. Representatives who previously enjoyed the governor's favor are now being attacked. The Speaker, who by most measures is deeply conservative, is also being attacked. This isn't a fight between Republicans and Democrats. So what is this fight really about?
I don't see it as a partisan issue. It's a fight for those who are doing their best to cling to some kind of democratic ideals and belief in a constitution and how our process is supposed to work, and those who don't. The basic duty of an elected member of the Texas House of Representatives or Texas Senate is to represent the people who sent them there. And if they're not allowed to do that because someone is forcing them to take a vote that they morally, intellectually, personally object to, just so that they can ideologically line up with that person, that's going against what they feel as their oath of office and their duty to uphold both the Texas and U.S. Constitution. And so I think that that's the divide that we're seeing and we're fighting. There are members of both political parties in the Texas House and Senate who are actively fighting to preserve their long-standing way of operating in a bipartisan, collective way.
We wanted to understand what could possibly be Governor Abbott's future vision for Texas if this divide continues. What are we actually facing?
Should the governor have his way and dismantle one of the foundational building blocks of our democracy, which is public education? What do you do with an uneducated populace except put them in prisons? Because that's, what we did before. Spring Branch ISD, I don't think they're actually going through with it, but one of their proposed solutions to their impending financial problems in the next years was eliminating librarians district-wide. If that's not a dystopian future, I don't know what is. I mean, no elementary school, middle school, or high school student having access to library books in their school is a pretty scary factor, right? And what do you do as a bored kid when you don't have access to something healthy and safe that you can get lost in, like a book?
So what is the bottom line?
It's an all-hands-on-deck moment for supporters of public education in Texas.
Yeah, Nicole, this is reminding me, we spoke to someone recently who works in San Antonio ISD, and he said they're going to have to close a bunch of schools because of budget cuts. And the community is rightfully upset, but they're upset at the school. So as a reminder, when this stuff starts to happen to your community, because we are underfunded, who should people direct that anger towards? Who actually has control over these things?
The state legislature and the governor who signs the check. They're the ones who decide whether or not to fund public education. When we think about the investments that our state is making and the hard decisions that school districts across the state are having to make that affect our kids and our teachers and our families' lives, the blame starts at the top.
We think this is an important point to emphasize. We want to keep in mind the tremendous pressure that our local ISDs are under and the amazing people who work for them. Let's remember who deserves our frustration and who to hold accountable.
And finally, it's not all bleak, right? Is there reason to hope?
I think it's still up in the air. We still have the opportunity to block vouchers in Texas. I think Texans, were they to come together and speak with a large, loud, unified voice, both in May and November, because remember, 2% of people, of all registered voters, voted on March 4th. Everyone else who did not vote, regardless of primary, regardless of party affiliation, is allowed to vote in May, and then again in November. right? We can vote in support of public education, and hopefully come January 7th of 2025, we'll be walking into a Texas legislature where Texans have reaffirmed, despite the March 4 losses, their support for public education.
Jaime had other great reminders for us.
The first step is reminding those closest to me that all is not lost, that despair is not a useful emotion right now, that we've done it before and we can do it again. One of the biggest issues for overcoming that money problem is by reminding people that they have power. People can't exercise it if they don't recognize it. I hope that people will start to see and start to feel the power within them, so that when they go vote and when they get others to vote and they start seeing things change, and it's like, oh, I can have a say.
So, if you have a runoff happening in your district, we urge you to exercise your power and vote. And we also know that voting can seem like it's not enough. So we asked Jaime, what else can we do?
Reach out to your current elected member. This is the time to do it. If they're ever going to answer your call, this is the time to do it. And ask them, how do you feel about the importance of public education to your community? That's what I would want people to know, is that they have the power to ask that very simple, very basic question and get an answer.
Jaime gave us a great look into the future being forged by every Texan, a way forward that isn't just fighting back against the loss of our democracy.
At Every Texan, we are very adamant about the fact that we have the power as Texans, if we come together, if we realize our potential and the abundance of our state, and that if we start making investments in our state, we can all do better. And so we're really focusing now and throughout the summer on what we're calling the People's Budget. And through the People's Budget, we hope to provide accessible ways that Texans can educate themselves on the policies that affect them and their communities so that they can act upon it.
Jaime reminded us of our power as citizens of the state of Texas.
The state of Texas has a multi-billion-dollar budget. We are one of the top 10 economies in the world. So we have the money and the ability to invest in ourselves in a way that is productive for all of us. We're focusing on public education and saying we deserve fully funded, high-quality K-12 education. We deserve fully funded, high-quality access to higher education. And there's other things across our policy spectrum that we work on at Every Texan. We're going to be taking that to our partners and engaging our partner organizations so that we can act as one this next legislative session. Hopefully, as we get Texans engaged in demanding what they need for themselves and their communities through the People's Budget, we'll start building that electoral power and that legislative power to really make headway for what we're trying to do.
We'll keep our eyes out for the People's Budget and finding ways to support it. If you want to stay in the loop with us, be sure to sign up for our newsletter on our website at www.mothersfordemocracyinstitute.org.
The voucher scam was created by me, Claire Campos O'Neill, and Nicole Abshire. Our producer is Michelle Dollenberg. Michael Osborne of 14th Street Studios provides production oversight. Jared Markowitz is our audio engineer. We use music from Blue Dot Sessions and APM Music. The Voucher Scam is a production of the Mothers for Democracy Institute. Special thanks to Nancy Thompson and Scott White, and thank you for listening.